Howdy, everybody. Bob Tallman for No Spin Rodeo. No politics, no BS, just hard hitting news and rodeo commentary from two of the most trusted sources in our sport. Kendra Santos, Tommy Joe Lucia. Listen up, here we go.
Hello, everybody. It's August 26th. 2025. This is episode number 73 of No Spin Rodeo. Headlines for today, non-rodeo headlines. Good to know that Taylor and Travis are a thing now officially. This is Hurricane Katrina's 20th anniversary. Cracker Barrel, they decided to scrap that old logo. They're going with the old logo. They're not doing the new one. I thought that was pretty interesting. And just for my co-host, the First Lady of Pro Rodeo Journalism, Kendra Santos, and Greg Teagarden. Have you ever thought about the fact that maybe a hummingbird looks over at another bird gliding and thinks, I'm an idiot? Just some random things to think about in your head. So here we are, No Spin Rodeo, a little non-rodeo stuff to kick her off. Good afternoon, Miss Santos. How are you today? I'm sure I just flipped your hummingbird right over backwards. Hello, Greg. Hello, Kendra. How are you guys doing today?
Great, you?
Doing great.
Peachy King, Peachy King. Well, thank you all for joining us live on Facebook and on YouTube. And those of you that are catching us on the swing back on the podcast tomorrow, hello, everybody. Welcome to this late August week. A lot going on in rodeo. Kendra, everybody is always waiting for you to catch us up on some rodeo news. And I'm going to have a little bit to throw in on the end. So you kick us off and let's see where we get.
Perfect. And as usual, I just have a few little quick highlights before we get into our, what do we call it? Our today's theme of our deep discussions. But anyway, Cheyenne Frontier Days. They just announced their class of 2025, which they will induct on September 5th. And a few of these people I'm not familiar with, and I'm presuming that they are local people, perhaps some committee people and special supporters. I will read them. Fred Emmerich, Patrick Gosh, Dan Howe, Dan and Linda Hubble, Toby Keith, Walt Linderman and Scotty, Scott Walton, Jim Ward family, Billy B. Weeks. So obviously Patrick Gosh, on the TV side, I still don't, it's hard for me to remember that Toby Keith's not still with us. Walt Linderman and Scotty, there are very few timed event horses in the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame, and Scotty's one of them. A great bulldogging horse that was, hugely famous in his era, and people are still talking about him. Scott Walton, our friend, who I always think of Scott as being part of the Harry Vold crew. I don't know about you, but
I think of him as U.S. Smokeless Tobacco crew.
Yeah.
Just Scott's, that's fantastic. Scott's a good human. I'm sorry.
Scott Walton and also my bulldogger friend Randy Barnes was always part of that. Daryl Barron, the Copenhagen Skull boys, and I laughed. I got into a conversation the other day with college rodeo coach CJ Aragon, and he was saying something about college rodeo, and I was like, when I was in college rodeo, the two sponsors were Copenhagen Skull and Miller Lite, and there was free beer and rolls of snuff everywhere, no IDs required or anything like that. To tell you, like, that was back before everything had to be so politically correct. And you mentioned Cracker Barrel. Do you suppose that the advertising agency that came up with the new logo is bankrupt now? Or
no, it was the CMO, and read a little article, and her background is not woke. I just thought it was interesting. She just thought it was a good idea to freshen up the logo and skaplooey in their face. And they're
Yeah.
going back to the old one, which I think is smart.
Oh,
I think it's a
oh, I
good
didn't hear
move.
that.
Yeah,
I didn't hear that.
they're
Okay.
reinstating the old logo. Yes, just hot off the presses.
Okay. Well, besides the fact that their stock plummeted, but maybe now it'll go way back up. It's possible before this is over that it'll be a brilliant maneuver, unintended, but everybody's been talking about their company for the last
Yep.
few days. So, Dan and Linda Hubble on that list from Cheyenne. Before I move ahead, um, you don't. A lot of times you don't see photographers recognized, but Dan Hubble, way back in the day before he started shooting pictures, was a bareback rider. He took so many thousands of pictures that it might even be over 1 million. I don't know. But the fact, as a working journalist for the about past 40 years, great pictures is the huge part of that equation. But if you can't get him in time to make your deadline, then it's not super helpful in promoting the sport. But that the teamwork of those two, I mean, Linda Hubble for decades was on my speed dial because she could be trusted to go pull the best picture of, if it was Casey Fields' bareback ride or if it was, Fred Whitfield's calf roping run, like she knew which one was the best one. Her husband was out there all day taking the pictures, but during Slack in real time, she could get me the winner pictures, which, since the internet, the timeliness factor is tremendous. Anyway, those are nice people, and I'm happy to see, they're no longer around, and man, they're really missed. So I think it's really cool to see them get their due. Anyway, moving on to another rodeo, not a rodeo, but kind of a big deal that was announced today, which is August 26th. Utah's Pioneer Week just announced, which was in the third week of July, as you know, just announced its top week, Pioneer Week top hands for 2025, and they are Stetson Wright and Carly Otero, and they're the champs of this particular award, which is a wonderful bonus for winning the most money at the rodeos in Ogden, Salt Lake City, and Spanish Fork this year. So Stetson apparently won money every time he nodded his head at those 3 rodeos. He won the all around at Ogden and Spanish Fork, and like to the tune of 48 grand. And anyway, I mean, that has quite a lot to do with this $80,000 lead he right now has in the world all around race. But anyway, Carly Otero, a barrel racer, she was the gold medalist at Salt Lake City, and she won over 28.5 between 19,450 at Salt Lake City and over 9,000 at Ogden. So these two, cowboy and cowgirl leaders of the pack here, $15,000 bonuses during the Governor's State of Sport banquet in Salt Lake City next spring. So big congratulations, because $15,000 a piece, that's legit, and that is, worth the effort. And I can't really imagine truly that people wouldn't make the effort just on the merits of each rodeo anyway to get there. But if there was ever, hey, it would be kind of an inconvenience to get to this one or that one, that's worth your while. So
Yeah. Well,
congratulations.
those rodeos, including ours at Salt Lake, that stuff being, basically 100 miles apart and $2 million in that week. And then the Governor State of Sports' Top Hand Award, which it's pretty cool because like last year's keynote speaker, because I was there in attendance and presented the award, the keynote speaker was the Chiefs head coach, Andy Reid. Like just listening to him talk in Andy Reid fashion was pretty cool. So put him up in a nice motel, come in, sit amongst champions. I think it's a good way to place our sport right up there with the rest of the sports in Utah. So thanks for bringing that up. Those
Well,
are
anytime
done.
rodeo can take, a center stage on the mainstream stage, and get some mainstream recognition. That's really cool. Okay, and it's also very encouraging to sponsors of those particular rodeos. And anyway, okay, the third thing I wanted to bring up in the form of a highlight of things that have just happened. Over the weekend, actually on Sunday, the Calgary Stampede team roping happened. I think they call it the Rocky Mountain Cup at the Nutrien Center in Calgary. Andrew Ward and Jake Long won it, and it was very, very much needed win. Really big, $25,000 a man, which, you know, the good news is it shot them from outside the top 15 to within the side of the top 10. You know, huge chess move on their part in the world standings. And, you know, the tough news for me, which we've already talked at length about, is that it was $25,000 a man, which is half of what all the other Calgary Stampede champs won in July, including, you know, the Breakaway Rippers, who were added to the roster this year, which I'm very happy for them, as I've already also said. But anyway, second up there in Calgary on Sunday, Clint Summers and Jade Corkill for $15,000 a man. And Jade Corkill makes me chuckle because he, in recent times, he won 3 world titles and then he took some time off because he wanted to. And no one ever has conversations about like the all-time greats or the Mount Rushmore of healers without mentioning Jade Corkill's name. But he stepped away, and very few people in my lifetime, my career, have, you know, in their prime just walked because they wanted to. And he did. And then he walked because he felt like it. He walked right back in, and there he goes. So I'm getting a kick out of it because it's like, what is the song? When he's done, I'm gonna play "I Did It My Way." Is that Frank Sinatra?
Yep. Yep.
Because that is Jade Corkill's theme song, and he's probably never heard of it. But at any rate, well, what would you like to talk about in terms of rodeo news before our big combo?
Well, I thought it was really interesting. A couple of things that I browsed upon, and our listeners may have, but they've got this duel at the dunes that Binion Survey's putting on the 30th. And it's a rough stock only competition. Money counts, but it's on the golf course right behind the Survey Ranch. So I thought that was kind of cool. And, you know, it is on the 30th, so it's the last day. It's a 20,000 added rough stock only event that there's going to set up the arena on the golf course. So I think that's pretty darn interesting.
And we're talking about September 30th, to be clear here, since it's on 26th.
Correct. Yeah.
The literal last day of the regular season.
Literally the last day of the regular season. I thought that was interesting. I did want to shout out to Tremont in Utah. Seems like we're talking about Utah. They had a $300,000 pro rodeo event, but the interesting thing that I thought was that city had lost 2 police officers, Sergeant Lee Sorensen and Officer Eric Estrada, earlier on in the week. And typical of what we do in rodeo, they saluted both of those with horseback or riderless horses in all of their performances. And I think that's just, once again, you know, cuts under the fabric of what we really are in our sport. And it makes me proud. So I wanted to say that. Now, also, I noticed that the 2025 Vet of the Year award, for those of you that are out there, there's a link for the rodeos committees to put out for Vet of the Year. There's a link. I don't exactly know how that is tabulated, but I do know there's a link for an application. I would encourage everybody, if you have a strong vet within your community and your rodeo community and at your rodeo, that the Vet of the Year, I think that's a notable and cool award. So I started looking at the world standings, right? Just because I was interested. And some of it you've already mentioned. But the biggest leader currently is Rocker. And let me get to my notes there. And I think he's 127 grand ahead of Miller in second place. And then you've got 75K, like you mentioned, in the all around Stetson beaten Wacy. And then, there's some 50K gaps in there. It looks like in the bronc ride and 50K. And then in the timed events, it's all pretty tight. It looks like 20K in the steer wrestling, $1,000 in the bull riding, separating Wacy and Stetson right now, with these X bulls, and in the WPRA, 5 grand. So it's kind of close. So I got to thinking, we've got till September 30th, like you mentioned, till the end of the season. And I wondered with, we talked about this last year. So I started looking at rodeos that were adding over 50K, and I'm not going to list them because it was 20 something between now and then, between X Bulls that are over 50K added. So then I got to thinking, I wonder how much money is available to be won in each discipline to put this stuff in priority.
When you say over 50K, you mean total for the whole rodeo?
Total for the whole rodeo.
Okay.
Total for the whole rodeo. There's a lot without, but total for the, and by the way, that doesn't, and I don't know why this is, and someone can probably answer it for me, but breakaway separate. So when I say that, that doesn't include breakaway, which is listed separately, but still, 50,000 overall payout, right, is real numbers. And you've got of course, you've got the Governor's Cup, that's 1.28 million total, right there at the end. So I'm going to ask you guys, take a guess at how much money is left to be won in each discipline in pro rodeo until September 30th. Greg, you go
I'm gonna
first.
say 125K.
125 grand a discipline.
It's
Or an
gotta be, it's
event,
gotta be this. I'm
or an
laughing.
event.
This is the old Tommy Joe's hidden tripwire game, but it's gotta be way more than that.
It is way more than that. And you will probably choose not to guess because this kind of stuff doesn't make you happy. But it's way more than that. It's way more than that. Do you
I'm
want to
interested.
guess, or do you want to shoot me the bird?
I'd rather you just tell us because I'm totally interested, but a couple of,
Okay.
I don't want to be the three stooges here.
You're so serious. You're so uptight. You're whitey tighties all the way. Okay. This is really cool. This is coming from official sources. There is left to be won in each discipline, and or if you're Kendra Santos event, $846,487.15. So
Wow.
that's a lot, and that's every event, each discipline before the 30th. $846,000 left to be captured.
Okay,
So
I mean, that's really cool. But that doesn't mean that if Stetson Wright wins every rodeo that's left because he has all the rodeos left, that he could win that, because obviously he can't win every hole at a rodeo. So, I mean, that's super great that that's like the better part of
but
$1
hold
million.
on. Okay, nice point. But if you average that, if you divide that by 15, because I figured you were going to say something like that. So if you just divided it by 15, the top 15, right? So let's say you're the top 15 and you divided it evenly, which is never going to happen. Nobody's going to evenly win all of that. But let's just say, for conversation, you divide that by 15, that's 56K. So, my point is these standings could very well really shuffle around.
Oh,
Really, really, really,
they
really,
will.
really shuffle around.
They will, because Puyallup and Pendleton and the Governor's Cup and Sioux Falls and all that, every single year, there's like,
Mandan, isn't it Mandan? What's that called? The Rough Rider Cup?
yes. And,
Right,
and
yep.
I mean, there are people that are just thrilled because they just came from nowhere. And then there are people that just get wrecked because they've been in the top 15 the whole year. And at the last moment, they get ditched. So yes, there's a ton of money to be won. But I mean, remember, folks, Stetson just won over 48 grand at 3 rodeos. So, and that, so yeah, somebody, and I mean, you look at one of the things that I don't know how many people have noticed is like, wait a minute, Coleman Proctor and Logan Medlin are constant like contenders for the world titles in recent years, and they haven't been in the top 30. And it's so strange, but wait till they get, presuming that they're into those big events at the end, and you think Coleman and that little bay horse Heisman that shakes his head and Coleman laughs while he's turning him around in the box because this horse is just going to do whatever he wants and he's awesome. Those are the kind of people that will like spit game and come from nowhere. And I mean, it makes for such exciting storylines, but I also can understand, the people that just fall out at the last moment. I mean, some of those people who I've known over the years, some of them, we never saw them again because they just got wrecked,
Well, and some of them, and I think it was Tough Cooper, right? Didn't get into the Governor's Cup, but just rodeoed his ass off, right? Isn't that right? In recent history, to get into the NFR, or am I
last
misremembering
year.
that?
I don't remember about whether it was in the Governor's Cup or not, but he at the end really definitely came through in a big way last year,
Yeah.
for sure.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I just think those are interesting. I just think that's interesting. It's current. We're reaching that time of year when we're starting to shuffle the cards to see who's at the NFR. And the other thing that I thought was interesting, because the NFR can make a big difference. The 1985 champs won there was $1.7 million up for grabs at the NFR, and this year it's 13.5 million. So that's good growth, right? I think that's good growth.
Okay, now wait a minute. What did you just say? Last year was what?
So I said what I found was the 1985 champions.
Oh, 85.
Do I need to put this on Braille for you or flashcards?
I didn't hear the 1985 part, Skippy.
Okay, 1985 champs competed for $1.7 million in purse. This year it's 13.5 and goes up $1 million for the next consecutive years, I guess, in certain increments. And so that's good. I think that's good progress. I was trying to figure out if that was bad progress and be able to say that, but I don't think so. I think that's good progress.
Do you have a inflation calculator? A, and B, do you know what a new truck costs in 1985 versus today?
Well, I know that $1.79 million in 85 is today worth 5.9 million. I did look that up. So, you're right. I mean, I don't know what a truck cost in 1985. I should Google that. I'm going to say 30 grand for a brand new crew cab dually. It's just a guess. And now they're 95,000. So, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
still real numbers.
there's no denying that what's happened in Las Vegas has been extraordinary. I just, what has happened to the horse market, fuel, all of it is just crazy. It's just wild. And so what I would love to know, I would love to pull like Roy Duval's profit margin from 1985 and compare it to whoever, wins this year or whatever. It'd be cool. I guess Oat won his first world title. I can ask him that year. So, just profit margins, because I'm always so interested in the profit margins for Cowboys. So, but yeah, the progress
And I
is
think it's
undeniable.
probably all more relative than we think. In that breakfast costs $26 now, and a dollar was worth more back then. So who knows? But still, I think those are good numbers to talk about. It's going in the right direction. How about that?
For sure.
An F-150 cost new $7,800 in 1985.
Do me a favor, Google an F-350. Because that's what they all drive. F3. Well, actually, it was probably, I don't know what they were. They driving Rams in 85 more than Fords? I don't know. Did the
Dodge.
Ram, did Dodge come in after 85? I think they started coming in 85. But I'd be interested what an F-350, Greg, cost in 1985 because it was that 1-ton truck and what that cost 95,000 now.
This says the base model was 16,000. That was with the long. That was actually for the top trim, 16,000. The base model was about 12,000.
And I said 30, so how was I wrong? $16,000, Kendra, for a brand new 1-ton truck with loaded. Now, loaded back then still had, I don't think they had electric windows. Did they? I don't know. You still cranked them, but they
No.
worked
Probably
every time.
automatic. Well, probably not even automatic, but
No, you
no,
did not get, because
radio,
they didn't have
Zero
transmissions
chance.
back then.
zero chance.
No
Yep.
chance, zero chance, yeah.
So
They didn't have the transmissions that actually knew how to shift back then, the automatics. It was all manual. You had to run a clutch, baby.
But a lot of cowboys in 1985 did not have a crew cab, by the way. I mean, there was plenty of them that just had a boot to get back to
Yeah.
the camper with
Yep.
a bunch of sweaty bodies back there.
Yep,
to
piled
save
up
them.
on top of each other. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's good stuff. Let's dive into, why don't you lay on us our headline or our working headline or whatever you want to call it for conversation today and see what we can scrap about.
That seems to be easy for us. Okay, rolling with the punches. And it's just such a natural subject because basically what we're talking about is in real time at rodeos, things happen. They always have, they are always going to, and how we handle these things. So
Ooh, I like
think
that.
you're going to introduce one incident and that's happened in the last week, and I'm going to introduce another. And I'm happy to talk about yours first and then mine, or however you want to do it. But you intro the first one, and let's just go.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start mine with a couple video clips to get us teed up. Wizard of Production, let our fans that are watching us on Facebook, those of you that are watching or listening to this on podcast are going to be shorted. Here we go. Here's how I'm going to tee it up. Go, Greg. Now, if you're watching this, that is the 70-year-old Liesl Harris. Now you see a drunk fan come in and tackle his robot. He now throws his guitar at the fan. He now goes back to check his robot and decides, this pisses me off. The bullfighter has the drunk by the leg on the fence. Here comes 70-year-old Liesl. He is angry. Bad camera work here. Liesl now grabs the guy in a headlock, throws him over the fence to the dirt. Liesl, the 70-year-old clown, has him in the headlock. Bullfighters are grabbing. Oh, a committee man comes out to join. Liesl now punches the guy in the face while laying on the ground. 2 haymakers, right hand haymakers. Liesl now realizes, I don't want to break my wireless microphone. It costs too much money. I don't get paid enough at this rodeo to break my wireless on this guy. I'm going to fix my wireless. Oh, Liesl realizes he doesn't have his wig on. His wig is on the dirt. He now grabs his wig in one hand, and
Here
the guy
comes
is being
the
arrested.
paramedic.
A paramedic with a zip tie. A pretty good in shape paramedic for most, or a police officer, I don't know. Now Liesl now gets his wig back on. He stands up. Oh, he
little
just
cheap
kicks
shot
the
there.
guy. He gives him a knee, an MMA knee in the face real quick. He's adjusting his wig. He calmly puts his hat back on. The guy is escorted out of the arena, and the act continues.
Okay, that is the most classic. I absolutely love that. I loved Liesl Harris. I first met him at the rodeo in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And I remember like getting to visit with him while he was putting on his makeup and stuff. Like, I love that guy. That is so great because that's from the era where the PRCA RCA board of directors would sometimes settle things outside with, they put their notebooks down and take it outside. And I actually think that a little more of that, I know we can't just, promote unrest, but you know what's funny? When you first start watching that video, you almost think that like, oh, this is part of the act. This guy comes in there and messes with the robot or whatever, and you're thinking, well, I mean, he looks like a dude, right, running in there. So you think, oh, this is part of the act. And then even when Lisa like throws the guitar at the guy, you're like, oh yeah, well, that was part of the act. Dude, that the bullfighters pull him, Lisa body slams the guy. I love it. I love that actually. So
Well, that's old school. That's a little old school. But back to our headline, rolling with the punches. Is that right?
yes.
Back to our headline. There was an amateur rodeo in Utah over the past weekend, and the rodeo clown was in the arena before the team opened between the events or disciplines. And he's doing his job, whatever that is, telling a joke, filling the time. And I guess what happened is some team ropers rode into the arena and were kind of pointing at him and telling him to get out of the way. And he said, "Go ahead and team rope. I'll, go ahead." He's typically they just back in the box, and then the contract personnel steps out of the way, and the action continues. Well, evidently this escalated to where the clown and the team rope and family in the arena had a little bit of a hustle, a little bit of an argument in the arena in front of the spectators. I even saw a spectator comment on this on Facebook. And one of the team ropers, I guess, rode at the clown and almost ran him over. But the details of that don't matter. But the point being, which we'll get into, is that S, and the rest of that word, happens during a live event. And because this is unexpected, how we respond is, I think, a result of how prepared we are and have we really thought about what could happen and what we would do if it happens. Now, I'll hand it off to you for your example.
Okay, well, first of all, there's just a thing or two that I would say because I hadn't heard about this, but I did, after the fact, speak to a credible eyewitness. And I will say this, you said that contestants and or committee people, whomever, asked the person to get out of the way. I'll say this to you as a matter of just a blanket statement from me. Anyone who interferes with the integrity of the competition, I'm out. If you, as an example, are in a position, I'll give 2 examples here. If you're in a position that might impact the direction of the calves or steers, please move. You're there
Okay,
to, okay?
I agree with
Okay,
that.
and
However,
also, okay, second example, real quick, because I saw this at a very high level rodeo 3 or 4 years ago, where I saw a photographer out about 2/3 of the way down the arena, crossways out in the center of the arena. And I sat there and watched. I thought it was right toward the end of Cotton Rosser's life. He was screaming bloody murder from the horseback behind the timed event chutes. It was so loud, this person couldn't hear him. I guess the announcers maybe didn't see it or whatever. And the guys who, like bulldoggers, hazing and bulldogging horses, were playing thread the needle around this guy out in the middle of the arena. It was insane. And let
okay,
me just tell you, I mean, that you all the decades I was in Sean Davis's production meetings before and after every perf at the NFR, if anybody, and I oftentimes was in charge of like the photographers or whatever, 0 chance can you impact the competition. So if in fact the credible person who told me that someone, I don't care who the person is, I don't know these people, is somewhere that's going to impact the competition, I'm sorry, no. Go ahead.
okay. Well, uh, again, we won't dive too much into the details because neither one of us
We weren't there.
That's irrelevant. But let me say a couple things. It's not the contestant's job to make sure that the arena is clear. Okay, for one. So let's say this clown or whoever or photographer in your case is in the way. It should not be the contestant's responsibility to decide if the field is ready for him. That should be the pro officials. But the producer, yes, they should.
Okay, here's where I'm going to disagree with you. My understanding for my lifetime is when you nod for your animal, you've accepted the arena as it is. That's why you will see guys right into the box. They might not even turn their horse around. They're looking over their shoulder. They're looking to see, is the arena clear? Okay, the judges, now, I guess in a perfect world, if the arena's not clear, like say somebody's got a horse or they're standing down there or they're coming back up the side with a team of horses in the bulldogging or whatever, really technically the judges, and a lot of times you'll see it, they'll step out in front of the box and they'll hold it. Or with the barrel racers, they will wait, make sure the rakers are out of the way or whatever, make sure the arena is clear.
So
But
whose problem is it? The judges or the
okay,
contestants?
it's the contestants' problem. I'm not saying it's the contestant's job. Let's split hairs here. But it becomes the contestant's problem if that arena is not clear. So in a perfect world, I suppose the contestant would say to the judge, hey, can you please, ask, I don't care who it is, it could be a committee person, whoever it is impacting which way the steers or calves go, or for that matter, turning back rough stock or whatever, if it's something that's not, if it is impacting the competition, it is the contestant's problem because that's who is impacted by it.
That's stupid. That's stupid. That if that's the case, if it's the contestant's responsibility to make sure
I didn't
that
say it
well,
was their responsibility. I said it will become their problem if the competition is impacted.
it is their
Therefore,
response. It is if they not. You said if they back into the knot and they call for the animal, the way the arena is their problem at that point. Correct? That's what you said earlier. Correct?
I said once you call for the animal, by the way, my friend, if say for example a bulldogger, unless something has changed and I don't know about it, it is that cowboy's responsibility. I mean, the judges to some degree, but ultimately it's that cowboy. If you nod for a steer that happened to break his horn back in the back pen, he's yours.
Okay,
Unless something has changed.
that may be the case, and I'm not arguing that that's not the case, but I am going to say that that's stupid. Let me give you an example. Patrick Mahomes, NFL football. You're a football fan. You know a lot about football. You told me that. Patrick Mahomes is out there. He goes under center. He looks. Is it his job to go, hold on, stop the play? There's a drunk fan. No, the referees do that. That's their job. They blow the whistle, they stop. So if what you say is actually the rules, that's stupid. It should be the pro officials that say, we're ready to go. Just like you said, the judges walk in front of the barrel racers. They don't let them out until Dingle Duke
but
and Dingle Dong are done setting the barrels
but
and
I
rocking
think
them
I
around and
think
breaking
that
them.
this we're splitting hairs here, and I don't think you're understanding what I said is the responsibility falls on the judges, but to compare what, 3 guys or 4 maybe at a rodeo judges overseeing the whole thing compared to the NFL, which has 85 different camera angles and it's security all around everywhere and the whole thing, that is different. But it's the responsibility, I believe it is the responsibility of the judges, but I'm saying it becomes the problem of the contestant, and so therefore the contestants are going to take some ownership, because once they nod their head, if there's somebody that's in the way or impacts their run, it's kind of too bad. That's
Well,
all I'm saying.
I appreciate that. And I think if a contestant who paid their money to be there to compete thinks that someone in the arena is going to interfere with their competition, they have the right to not nod. I do not think they have the right. Yeah, well, let's save this for later. They have the right to not to not take their animal. Rough stock, timed event. This is true. I think I agree with you there. However, the flip side of that relies a little bit. You talked about cotton roster. The flip side of that relies on the people producing the event and the pro officials, because the overall product is entertaining, needs to be entertaining, and these things should be, if they're not, scripted. This is going to happen. Clown's going to come into the arena. Clown's going to spend a minute while they're getting the steers, just because they got the steer ready early and the barrier was perfect, and Charlie the judge already had his donut or whatever, and they're all ready. The clown was told to go out there. That contract, it wasn't even a clown. That contract was supposed to go out there and do this. So they're out there doing this
Yes, they're
to
entertaining
entertain the
crowd.
fans.
They're entertaining the crowd as they are asked, and they are filling dead spots. And sometimes some people would go so far as to say potentially distracting, filling the dead spots can be just keeping the pace and the vibe going. Or when something really rough happens, it can be helping to entertain, getting the crowd's attention off of an issue that most of the people in the stands would never notice. So there's a place for that. But you and I both know that these arena entertainers, as opposed, when I'm a kid, an act came out and they stopped the show and this person did an act. Now the in-arena entertainers, they're there, for throughout, for pacing of the show and entertainment. That's a relatively recent phenomenon, as and so there's a place for it. But those guys, I mean, you're not going to see, Rumford or JJ, Harrison or any of these people. They're not going to get in the way of the competition.
No, and they shouldn't. But you
Right.
also have to remember that not everybody sitting in the stands is solely there to watch the healers loop.
Not saying they are, but
They're
that
they're
person
there
can
to be
entertain
entertained.
people. You can entertain people without corrupting the competition.
Well, I agree with that. And even the very best entertainers will get caught yapping when Stetson Wright's crawling over the chute. And that stuff has to be managed by a producer. Not very many shows have a producer whose job it is to prioritize what content is in front of the stands. Most of these rodeos just happen, right? They just
But
happen.
also, that's a lot of the banter between the announcer and the entertainer or clown, whatever you want to call them. Those guys, they kind of ride shotgun over each other and keep each other going, and they, the announcer will like tap the guy or kind of shut him down or whatever. I mean,
I know.
you know,
I agree, but that's another problem, is not a problem, but another result is that the announcer ultimately becomes the show producer, ultimately, because he's talking, right? So many announcers end up trying to produce the show because they almost have to, right? Because, like you said, if they stop talking to said clown or whatever, then in theory, that's a note to get on to competition. But in these other events, these larger events that can afford it, that have producers, that's the producer's job to radio down and say, hold the timed event cattle, hold that guy. And by the way, at my radios, I get dirty looks all the time from both ends of the arena when I hold it, because I have a certain amount of business that I have to get done, whether it's a paying sponsor, whether it's a promotion, whether it's an entertainment feature that I want that 3-year-old kid to see. I hold it. And then we clear the arena and we have competition. So we're not really disagreeing. I don't think there's ever any place to interrupt the purity of competition for the fairness of the athletes that entered and for the fairness of the fans that want to watch it. But I also think that no part of the rodeo show should feel like that they're so entitled that they're the only part of the rodeo show.
It's fair. Yeah, I'm simply saying that, no contestant is going to cuss you for having to be held up for, 10 seconds to finish the very important spot on the
I don't
scoreboard.
know. I don't
But
know.
we can
I don't
communicate
know.
about that. However, if something happens that impacts their shot at a fair shake, that's a completely different issue. I think we again are airing it out, but we're really not disagreeing with the fundamentals here. I don't
Yeah,
believe.
I agree with that. Well, no, I think that fundamentally it should be the pro official's responsibility to ensure that the competition is ready. Now, in the case of a steer with a broken horn, let's talk about that. Let's say the judge is out front, he doesn't see that, the cowboy does, and stops it, and he should. And I can understand how that responsibility, but you have to clearly define this stuff, Kendra. It can't be, it shouldn't be, I don't think, in the level of competition where there's 800 and what did I say? $846,000 to be won in the next month. This shouldn't be, well, maybe it should be the cowboy, maybe it's a pro official,
No,
as long
but
as it works
yeah, but
out, what the hell?
we're really not disagreeing about this. It is the judge's responsibility. However, if I'm Ty Erickson and I'm backing in the box and I've just checked number 87 out in the pen and he's fine, and somehow walking up the alley he broke his horn, I go in the box, I see that, I tell the
Yep.
judges, they turn him out and I run the extra. It's a well-oiled machine, no problem. These guys are professionals. They know how to handle it. It's all I'm saying is I don't want it to become the Cowboys' problem. But Cowboys own up, and we always hold them to the responsibility. Ultimately, this is their living. So let's go to example 2. Again, rolling with the punches. Okay, so I'm watching Kennewick up in Washington last Friday night, August 23rd. And New Mexico tight end roper Bryce Derer, who was last year's reserve rookie of the year, he missed his calf, but it was one of those deals where like a split second later, the horse he was riding just went bam down on his side. Okay. So for context, like this kid is out there. He's in the top 40. He's out there with this grind. At this time of the year, he's grinding it out to try to get into next winter's buildings. Okay, to be high enough to be in those limited rodeos next year. So this is a grind because all the big dogs are out there. So the rodeos are so tough, but there's not much added money because a lot of people by now have gone home. Okay, so he was riding his girlfriend, I think her name's Carly Potter, her very really special horse Tippy. Okay, so pending an autopsy, we're not going to know what happened here, but anybody's best guess would a couple of the top 2 guesses would have to be like a heart attack or an aneurysm. It was sudden, boom, and it happened right out. It happened on television, live in a big rodeo. Okay, so I was watching it live again, as I said, but I will say again, these things are going to happen. They're going to happen in any live event. So occasionally, every single person involved in this situation did the absolute best possible job. So with no warning, with no rehearsal, Bryce jumped on Tippy's head to hold him down, because you don't know, like when something like that happens, it's like, is he hurt? Did he break his back? Did he, you don't know. So you keep him down, let's, let the vet get in here and see what's going on. The cameraman immediately cut away, clutch. That also meant cutting the voice of Roger Mooney, the announcer who's been there for 30 years. But I guarantee you, without having heard what he said, that he knew exactly what to do and say. Justin McKee was hosting the broadcast back in Fort Worth in the Cowboy Channel studio. He couldn't have been more calm and cool. And he addressed it immediately. They immediately cut away. He addressed it. He knew, don't say too much, don't speculate, but he did every single, like, if you were going to follow a script. Boots on the ground, Kennedy Riggs. She did a beautiful job of describing with I couldn't have like handed her a script to do a better job of what she saw without being, disturbing to fans. Um, and to say all the right things. Bryce's first concern was for the horse, and the cowboys and the committee people jumped in to help. And she explained beautifully that every PRCA rodeo, a veterinarian is on site, just like we have, medical staff on site for the human athletes. It's just, this couldn't have been handled better. And it's a sad thing that happened. And but it is one of those things that it wasn't an injury. I mean, sometimes these things happen. I remember a barrel horse that I don't remember her name offhand, but the barrel racer was from Florida. At the NFR, her horse went down out in the middle of that arena, and we had to handle it the same way. It was a really long time ago. But this wasn't an injury in this case, but how it was handled, what happened to this horse, like we lost great cowboy the other day, Chris Glover, to pulmonary embolism, like unexpected. He just was having a great day and died. Okay. It's the same thing that happened to Tippy here. So it's what we're here talking about, I guess, in both of our examples is there is an absolute art to handling emergencies in real time. Like every once in a while a bull jumps into the crowd, right? Or there's a horrible injury. A fight breaks out at the beer stand. Something happens in that arena, in the alleyway leading out of the arena. Something happens, and it's like it takes me back to Mac Altizer's Bad Company tour. Expect the unexpected, right? Because these things happen. And so that's, I guess, I know that I'm sure you've seen it, but there's like a 4-inch thick binder that was the playbook that when I was the director of communications for the PRCA, the NFR playbook, there's nothing that could have happened in that building that we hadn't all gone through tediously ahead of time. We'd all read it. We'd all talked about it. I mean, bomb sniffing dogs. This is what we do. If this happens, this is if the power goes out, this is what we're going to do. If there's a bomb threat, this is what we're going to do. And so, a lot of us now, as we get older, we have a lot of these experiences, but every rodeo, every judge, every contestant, the more we can talk through and think through things before the emergency happens, the better we can have a chance to keep our cool, because like, okay, in the Utah deal, I'm told third hand that, there was, speculation that this could impact the volunteers' willingness or want to have a rodeo next year in that community. That would be a terrible outcome, So if we can talk about these things and, try to not have that not be the case, that'd be great.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things that you brought up subtly that are worth thinking about. So the example that I put forward, everybody probably wasn't quite as prepared for this circumstance as they would be for a injured animal. So in your case, they were well prepared. Everybody handled it in a good. This was more of a this isn't something that was probably in the 4-inch binder, right? That there was going to be emotional rise in the arena between a contract personnel member and a contestant. Now, that being said, a couple things. I agree with you 1000%. First off, one of the things that I say in some of my presentations is the very best person at an event is the person that's calm, collected, and thinking, right? That's controlling emotions, thinking clearly in all these situations, whether it's an injured animal, an injured person, a fan. A second thing is I sat through a presentation from SWAT on live events. And this is kind of interesting, and I think our audience might hear it, what should hear it. And they said something to me that really triggered. And they said, have you talked to your family about the what ifs? Right? I'm like, what are they talking about? Well, so many people in the case of an active shooter, Kendra, actually don't move, right? They're taken so off guard by the situation at hand. There's gunfire. They just freeze, right? That's a natural response when, had they just contemplated it, right? Had they just thought about the fact, if I'm at an event and I hear gunfire, what am I going to do? Well, you're going to take cover or get the hell out of there, right? That's the right thing to do. Flee. Um, if the person's right in front of you, you flee or fight, maybe you have to fight, right? But have you contemplated that? Have you contemplated when you're going to your car in a parked garage, a young lady like you by yourself? What would I do if someone comes up behind me? And just what the SWAT team member said, just thinking about this will help your reaction. So I think we apply this to all the rodeos out there, the contestants, the judges, the producers, the committees, just like you said. Maybe you should take some time in contemplating a lot of the what ifs, even if you just contemplate them. Maybe they're not Sean Davis style, wrote down in a book, 4-inch binder, where everybody memorizes it. Because the reality is, these rodeo committees are volunteers. They're putting on events. They have a real life and real jobs. They do this once a year, but that shouldn't stop us from in these production meetings and the advanced meetings to say, hey, if this stuff happens, let's think about it, right? Let's
And
think about what we're
yes,
going to do.
yes, and some of the basics, because a lot of times the fundamentals, if you can cover the fundamental basics. For example, when my sons are little boys, okay, here's our plan. If there is a fire in this house and it is such that we can't get to each other, each of you and okay, we're each going to go out our respective windows and we're going to meet down at the arena. That's our plan, right? And so in a situation, maybe the situation, and I don't even know exactly what happened at that rodeo in Utah, but no matter what's going to happen, maybe next year they would have one sort of garrison slash on the ready for any security at each end of the arena, for example, just to say, hey boys, let's take it outside, or just let's get this out of here. You know what I mean? We're just going to remove this. We're going to de-escalate it out of the arena, away from our crowd. I think it's important here to say there are some people are going to say, oh, who cares about an amateur rodeo in Utah? What does that have to do with this? Would never have happened in a PRC rodeo. But the fact of the matter is, it's like people saying, who cares about the animal welfare antagonists in California? It doesn't impact us. Not true.
Right.
Because it can absolutely, because if it impacts LA, it's going to Houston, it's going to Denver, it's
Yep.
going to San
Amen.
Antonio. So
Preach.
it's not
Yep.
true. And so just because it was in an amateur rodeo, this could absolutely, PRCA rodeos could learn from this. Amateur rodeos can learn from it, because ultimately the people in the stands at that rodeo, do you think they knew the difference? That, oh, gee, this isn't a professional rodeo. They don't know the difference, and most of them don't
No.
care.
Correct.
So they
Correct.
just say it's a rodeo, and somebody goes on there and goes, I was appalled that I saw this at a rodeo. That's not good for any of us.
Agreed. Agree 100%. I remember we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico, PBR. We thought we had probably crossed everything when a very large Native American human being, I'm talking massive man, decides to crawl out and run into the arena while Promised Land, if you remember that big chalet, was out there. And again, we reacted, but this wasn't not expected, right? My guys reacted. They got out there. They got him. He didn't die. Well, they had a hard time getting him out because he was much stronger than my guys. But so to your point, we know that expiration dates for all of us and animals and all of us they're a given. We don't know when they happen. All of the, and to apply the control of emotion and all of these things that we talk about, my only kind of throw into this is just contemplate it, both personally with your family and in your life, and professionally in the entertainment world. Contemplate what happens when there's storms. We saw that big storm coming, right? That we showed on that rodeo. This stuff, like you said, this is real, unrehearsed. And by the way, our sport is the absolute most difficult live event you'll ever do. I challenge anybody to bring me a live event that's harder than a rodeo, where you've got all of these animals with their own personality, all of these contestants with their own personality, some pretty razor sharp, committees that are there just trying a good job, drunk fans, right? And one cable coming in with power that everybody's plugged into, right? 17 power strips into the one extension cord. Like, this thing is literally balancing on a thread. So we're lucky we get by as good as we do.
Well, you mentioned Ty Marie's event, PBR event in Albuquerque, and of course I went many, many times, but Promised Land, you jarred a memory. I just remember an epic ride, Owen Washburn on Promised Land. I wonder if
So
that
do I.
was anytime the same of that. But speaking of rolling with the punches, I was the PBR's editor in chief when we lost Glenn Keeley at Ty's event in Albuquerque. And
Yep.
that happened. There it is. And we all had to deal with it right then. We had to do a press conference. All the things to handle it. And we're like a band of gypsies, like a traveling family, right? And we
I
lose one of
remember
our
that.
own.
I forgot how much we talked then, because I
Oh,
called and said, "What do I do? All these people are here with cameras." I remember calling you. What do I do? What do I say? Yeah. Yeah.
I remember spending much of that night in a hotel room there at the host hotel. And people, I remember Tandy being in that room, and we're like, I mean, Tandy's part of our family. We're all family, and we're having to deal with this. And Cowboys are crying, Tandy's crying, everybody's, but we had to go out on a stage and hold a press conference. And it's just, but I mean, sometimes these things happen. We lost Brent Thurman at the NFR. He died a couple days after it was over, but it's like, it's very rare.
Yeah.
But when it does happen, the handling of it and what happened the other night, I'm saying our sport was done so proud about how that was handled at Kennewick when that horse went down. And it was very, very sad for everybody, but professionalism prevailed. It was a proud handling of that for sure. So
Well, and I think rolling with the punches, if you just put that in a literal thing, someone's swinging at you, there's a couple ways to roll with the punches. One is to just keep taking them in the face and moving, right? Those would be the people not prepared, right? The other one is, yeah, a punch is going to get thrown. That's what we're saying at a live event. It's probably going to contact you. How you respond is way more important than the problem. 100%. And I think we clarified that today well. And it's worth thinking about if you're out there putting on rodeos or if you're putting on a birthday party for your kid. You just need to contemplate, not tragedy, that's not what we're saying, but just contemplate that everything is not going to go as planned in anything that's happening in real time, right?
fair enough. Things do happen.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop it. Brilliant conversation from Miss Santos. Thanks for your input, Greg. Thank you for joining us right here on episode 73. This is No Spin Rodeo. Have you often wondered what a hummingbird thinks when he sees another bird gliding? Just saying. All right. Until we meet again, we'll see you next Tuesday. Tommy Joe Lucia, Kendra Santos, Greg Teagarden. You guys be safe out there. Look up. That's where it's all at.